Now you're smart because unlike me, you're watching this video before installing your wall-mounted TV and will avoid these 5 common mistakes people make.
What about when you almost drop the TV? That's not on your list.
True, Shaz. Okay, 5 and 1 bonus mistake you should avoid making when installing a flat screen TV on your wall. Now this is a mistake no one really talks about, so even Kiwi Daz made this one. It's the reason why I'm replacing my standard flat mount bracket with an articulating one. You see, even though I hid cables in the wall that run from behind the TV to a cupboard and under my floating shelf to connect things to the TV, inevitably, Shaz will want to do something that involves swapping around the connections in the back of the TV, like challenging me to the annual Wii tennis tournament. With the TV mounted on a standard flat mounting bracket, plugging in cables is a total faff. So mistake number 1 is not considering how you will access the back of your TV. This might be alright if you're mounting a small TV or don't expect to change any of your connections, but for the main TV in the living room, it's possibly worth the extra dollars to get a mount that either articulates or tilts to give you convenient access to the back of your TV. Another option is to use a flat mount, but to attach it to blocks of wood and attach those to the wall. These will act as a spacer, floating the TV off the wall and giving you better access. So to avoid mistake number 1, you should think about access to your TV's connection and either install a block as a spacer or use an articulating mounting bracket. The second mistake you should avoid is mounting your TV too high. If you're going to be watching your TV sitting on the couch, you will want to mount your TV lower than you might think. A good rule of thumb is that the center of the TV should be within 15 degrees up or down from the viewer's eye level. If you can't do this because of your situation, you might need to buy those fancy lounge chairs that tilt back or buy some extra pillows for the sofa or something. So avoid mistake 2 by mounting your TV within 15 degrees of eye viewing level if possible. Okay, so mistake 3 is a little bit more obvious, but I've got some tricks that can help you succeed in making sure your TV is mounted securely to your wall. First, you need to know what kind of wall you are mounting your TV on. Is it a solid concrete or brick wall, or is it a light timber or steel framed wall? If it's a solid wall, the bracket probably came with some of these little plastic plugs, and your task is pretty straightforward. If it didn't, you might need to go to your hardware store and buy some wall plugs. Just make sure that drill bit you use is the same size as the wall plug, because these plugs work by gripping on the sides of the hole as they expand when you insert the screw into them, and you don't want them pulling out. If your wall is made of timber or steel framing, don't use those plastic plugs and screws. They are only for solid walls. However, you can use them as a guide for the length and diameter of the screws you need if your bracket didn't come with them. For steel framing, you will need self-tapping screws and wood screws for timber framing. You will need to make sure that the head of the screw is big enough to not slip through the hole in the bracket. The screws need to be long enough to go through the plasterboard and into the wall framing an inch or 2. A screw around 2.5 inches or 65 millimeters long will usually do the trick. You will want to pre-drill a hole in the wall for this with a drill bit that is around the diameter of the shank of the screw inside the threads. If you're unsure, test it on a scrap of wood first to get a tight fit. Now your fixings are sorted, you need to locate the framing in your wall. You can use the old-timers method of knocking on the wall and listening for where the wall echoes and where it doesn't, or you can get your stud finder and mark the framing locations on the wall with that. A third option is to use a small magnet, as the fixings that hold the plasterboard to your wall are steel, so a magnet will stick to them if you pass it over the surface of your wall. Whatever method you use, you want to find exactly where the studs are so that you can locate your fixing dead center on them. And as I promised, I have a hack. Once you have the location roughly figured out and marked on your wall, take your smallest drill bit and drill a series of holes where you think the edge of the framing or stud is. Pay attention to the drill and you should be able to tell the difference between when it is missing or hitting the framing. For timber framing, you'll also see wood shavings on the drill bit. This is an important step to avoid your fixings only just catching the edge of your stud or missing it completely, which could result in your TV coming to an untimely death. Once you have mounted your bracket to the wall, give it a good yank to verify it's securely attached and say, that ain't going anywhere. If the framing you locate is not in a good location for attaching your TV where you want it, you've got a couple of options. You can either go to the hardware store and buy special anchors designed for attaching directly to the plasterboard with a rating high enough to handle the weight of your TV, or you can attach a piece of wood across 2 studs first and then attach your bracket to the piece of wood. So to avoid mistake 3, mount your TV securely by using the correct fixings, verifying the exact framing locations in the wall with a small drill bit, and testing the bracket before hanging your expensive TV on it. Now, I know I just covered mounting height, but there's another way you can get the height wrong. When you are attaching the bracket to the wall, you need to consider the height that the TV will sit at when it attaches to the bracket. My bracket has a range of adjustability for the TV height. I set it in the middle of this range and attached it to the back of the TV first, and then measured the distance from the bottom of the TV to the mounting bracket holes. Once you've worked out where you want your TV on the wall, mark this location on your wall, use some masking tape for this to avoid putting marks on the wall, then measure the distance from either the top or bottom of your TV to the mounting hole height. That's the height sorted, but you also need to check side to side. Your bracket might have a bunch of holes for mounting to the wall, which will make this easy. You just need to select the correct hole. For an articulating bracket, you need to put the bracket into the closed position and measure the distance to the sides of your TV. The articulating bracket will usually be able to close either to the left or to the right. One way might work better for you than the other. So to avoid mistake 4, mark your desired TV location on the wall with masking tape, temporarily mount your bracket to the back of your TV first, and measure the bracket's mounting holes in relation to the edge of your TV, and then mark your mounting hole locations on the wall. Now this can be a little trickier than you think. Although these mounting bolts and patterns do follow a standardized approach called the VESA standard, depending on the size of your TV, these will be one of 3 sizes, M4, M6, or M8. Sorry Americans, but these bolts are metric and your TV typically doesn't come with them. You might get lucky and find information in your TV's manual or by Googling your TV model. Another option is to measure the diameter of the holes. Once you've worked out the bolt diameter, you also need to know the correct thread pitch. I know, crazy, right? But don't worry, I researched this for you. You're almost there. Now you just need to know the correct length. The correct length will go through the bracket and into the TV, but not hit the stop inside the TV. Measuring the thickness of your bracket is straightforward, but to measure the hole in the TV, you need to get a little bit crafty. If you have the bolts, you can carefully screw them in to check. These should screw in very easily. If they become harder to screw in, stop immediately, as you don't want to damage the TV. Although the TV typically has a piece of metal, stopping the bolt going too far, it might only be a thin piece of metal. To measure the depth before heading off to the store for your bolts, you can measure the depth by putting a cotton bud or Q-tip into the hole and measuring that. There are also various TV mounting bolt packs available from places that sell TVs, hardware stores, or online. I'll leave a link for some in the description. These packs sometimes also include spacers, as getting the exact right length of bolt can be a bit tricky. You might want to make sure the bolts are not too short also, and screwing them into the TV by only a thread or 2 is a bit dangerous. I ended up making custom bolts from cutting a piece of all thread and putting a locking nut onto their ends. Hopefully you don't need to do that, but I'll leave some more tips on that and how to shorten a bolt in the description if you also struggle finding the right bolt. So to avoid mistake 5, measure your bracket and TV bolt holes and select the correct bolts for your TV and bracket. Make sure the bolts are not too long or too short and screw them in with your fingers first to check before tightening them to the bracket. Now, although this sounds obvious, I'm glad Shaz reminded me to include this tip, as it is a little tricky, and you might need to have a few goes at it before you get it right. TV brackets usually incorporate a way to attach your TV to the bracket after you have mounted the bracket to the wall and be able to remove it again. These also typically include a latching mechanism to ensure the TV stays on the bracket. Like I said, these can be a little bit tricky, so you might need an extra set of hands, especially if your TV is a monster. The way that most of them work is that you need to first pull on the tethers that hang down to open up the latching mechanism. The tethers are often adjustable in length, so you can hide them once the TV is mounted. Installation follows this sequence. 1. Pull the tethers to open the latching mechanism. 2. Put the TV onto the bracket by placing it against the clip and sliding it down onto it. 3. Make sure the TV is flat against the bracket and you're not tilting it. And 4. Release the tethers, allowing the latching mechanism to spring closed. And 5. Most importantly, before letting the TV go, test it's secure by trying to lift the TV off the bracket again. If it is correctly engaged, it won't let you lift it off. If it doesn't work the first time, put it back down and start again at step 1. Removing the TV is the reverse technique. You hold the TV, pull down on the tethers to disengage the latch and lift it from the bracket. To avoid dropping your TV when hanging it on the bracket, open the latch with the tethers, lift the TV onto the bracket, release the latch tethers, and most importantly, test it by trying to lift it off the clip before letting it go. You're all set now. To get it done, eh? And avoid these 6 common mistakes people make when mounting their TVs. If you found this video helpful, please like it so you can find it later and so others can too. Get it done, eh?